what happens when patients show up and say, Doc, I have done keto before and I had this really great experience and now I'm back and I can't seem to get the same results. And I'm doing everything like I did before. And I want to show you what these patients did, and I'm going to show you their mistake because it isn't an accident. This is predictable. So in the background there is something I call the Keto Continuum. And for the folks that are with me in this class, you're going to really see me unpack this process of what happens on the Keto Continuum. The first module came out when the course was released on Friday. After the question and answers, we released module 2, which really takes them through week 1 of the ketogenic journey. In many ways, I push patients to study this, but had never written it out in a way that they could see where I was going with it, that they could see the price of payment when you don't have method to what you're doing. Number 1, they are entering into the ketogenic diet where they left off. So let's just outline this. So typical people show up where they eat every 2 to 4 hours. If you are a carb burning person, that's how long the fuel lasts. Step 1, which really, or actually Keto Continuum number 2, which is really the first step of the ketogenic diet, is to limit your carbs to less than 20 total grams per day. And before you know it, you will accidentally be eating every 6 to 8 hours. This isn't something I tell them to be aware of. It just happens. The fuel inside your body, when it comes mostly from fat, will transition you into producing ketones and using ketones. And the beauty of a ketone versus a molecule of glucose is the length of time it lasts as energy. It is stable, it has less free radicals that are associated with it, it is cleaner energy, and I don't mean in the sense of green, but I mean less free radicals, very long, steady, stable energy. And without saying a thing, they go from eating every 2 to 4 hours in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. Some would be as long as I would think it takes. They are eating every 6 to 8 hours. The next phase that happens is they truly accidentally miss a meal. I like to outline that usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. If you look way over, way over to the way edge of the chart on here, you can't see my pointer, but I'm pointing to 4 to 6 weeks. And then I talk about how this is chemistry. I don't make them learn anything except 20 carbohydrates. They stick to the 20 carbohydrates, and something magical inside happens where the chemistry will lead the way. They really don't need to make any outside choices except keep those carbs, total carbs, less than 20 a day. When they've done that, I usually celebrate with them, and we don't celebrate with food, but really praise them, saying, really, that's the hardest part of this, is to get to that point. I really want you to now step into eating 2 meals per day. This is Keto Continuum number 4, and they need to stay there for a couple of weeks practicing 2 meals a day before they then move into higher levels of their metabolism, which include time-restricted eating with other rules. And then, like these 2 patients that I'm thinking of, they both find a baseline metabolism that worked for them. Now, between the female and the male, the female obviously was the one who got pregnant and now is back, and the other one was the one who had multiple sclerosis and had lost 100 pounds. The multiple sclerosis patient really was doing great at 1 meal a day. His numbers were pretty good, but he really had stalled on the weight loss for probably a couple of months, and that's why I pushed him to a 72-hour fast. And the other one was looking for getting pregnant during a certain quicker period of time. However, they both had been at this baseline metabolism for months. I mean, between eating 2 meals a day and then their baseline metabolism of time-restricted eating, day in, day out, they had been there for months. And in the background, what was happening to them is a restoration of some of the fat-based hormones that really did require restoration. And I would contend that you don't jump into a baseline metabolism. You have to go through this section here. If they come in and say, I'm going to go to 16.8, I tell them you're not going to get the benefit of those hormones rising then. You really have to eat high fat and low carbohydrates for the beginning phase. If you have high insulin, I need to shift your chemistry before you dive in to the advanced levels of the ketogenic diet. So what we did with these patients is we moved into, first of all, you'll see that strip there went from urine. Now we are going to need their blood work. And this is what I call stressing metabolisms. There are really 4 of these cycles that I outlined here, but some other strategies I use in my patient care. And I said, all right, we're going to do 8 weeks consecutive of 72 hours of fasting. And I want you to notice some of the things that was protected for these patients. Number 1, this is a psychological test. Your body's ability to say no to food for 72 hours isn't a small, it's not small. That's a huge task. Use a tribe for best results. So they were in the support group. They were coming to the support group. I knew if they had troubles, we had a unit of people around them. One of the key things for stressing a metabolism in this area isn't that they hop back into a 36-hour fast. It really is the psychology that goes behind these metabolisms. So if I go back through and just kind of remind you, why am I covering this again today? The answer has to do with when patients show up and they've fallen off the ketogenic wagon, and now they're like, oh, that keto diet works so well. I've just had a tough season of life. I can't get back into it. I'm going to go back to the ketogenic diet. And then they step into a part of the ketogenic diet that their body isn't ready for. It was when they left. And even maybe for several seasons, if you would, of a ketogenic diet. Several seasons of, they fell off for a couple weeks, but because they'd been on that keto continuum, they'd had stable numbers of hormones for the past 3 or 4 months. Those hormones take a while to reestablish, but once they are there, they have the benefit, the privilege of, your body's not going to let that reverse back to an inflammatory state in 10 days. It's going to take you a season. It's going to take you multiple months of a high carb diet back to what you were doing. And I get it. People have seasons. Babies are real. They're only that little for a short period of time. And it's hard. It's hard to take on a change of a ketogenic journey while being a young mom, while being, there's thousands of answers. When I look at the multiple sclerosis patient and some of the behaviors that resumed in his life, he was now back at work. And when he wasn't at work, he had control of what his temptations were. And now that he's back at work, there's a snack here, there's donuts here, and maybe he doesn't have the really high carbohydrate foods that he uses, but by golly, he is eating way more than 20 carbs a day, that's for sure. And as a result, his inflammatory markers rose again, and his brain function sunk again. As a result, the one woman went from pretty solid ketogenic journey, enough to lower the insulin and really get her ovaries doing what they were supposed to, and then they fell off again. And unfortunately, those organs had been inflamed, and they weren't. Autophagy is what happens when your body recycles unused proteins, and that takes time. That takes a good couple of years to reverse all of that scar tissue that's been around from high inflammation. Well, they weren't keto and in autophagy for 2 years. So as soon as they went back to that inflammatory state for, let's say, 6 or 8 weeks, that inflammation found the old parking spots. They were still all there waiting for the inflammation to show up. And now they are on the wrong path again. So they step back in and say, I'm going to be on the ketogenic diet, and they start just hopping to, let me go back over to this one. They hop right down to 16:8, and they say, well, I'm just going to not eat for 8 hours a day. And what happens there is they missed raising their hormones again. And, in true fashion of being in America with access to wonderful health care, patients will go into their gynecologist saying, I think my hormones are off. I'd like you to do some testing. And we can, just like we can spend the money and test for infertility. And I would say, wait, before you do that, save your money, start a support group, and be keto. Really be keto, starting at the beginning, be keto for 8 weeks. Not going to cost you a thing. I mean, your mental stress, it will a little. A workbook eventually it might cost you. But be keto consistently for 8 weeks and watch what happens. and then check your hormones after you've been keto. Because if you hop into a hormone-related diagnostic pattern, I can check all of them. I can look at saliva. I can look at endocrine pulsations. I can spend tens of thousands of dollars looking at your endocrine system. And all that did was tell me what it was today. If you go keto, I have to do all the testing again, because the change in the endocrine system is very much about the pulsatile response that your system has to stress, to relaxation, to shutting down, to being healthy. And when patients have a history of being keto and then they're not keto for a while and they hop back in without restoring their ketogenic chemistry, they're not going to have the success they did the first time around. Why? Because they don't have the hormones on their side.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.